All of you, please let us recite these verses together. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurumilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guroho Sri Yutapatakamalам Sri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jaya Sri Krishna He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Deenabandhu Jagatpati Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Brindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So the essence of all spirituality is in this one mantra, Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Fine, we will get to that point in our journey. So before that, we are doing our third chapter, and this is the fourth session. And the acronym of the third chapter is TREE, T-R-E-E. T stands for
Tyaga or
Tyaga.
renunciation.
Yes, Tyaga or renunciation. And in that, we have seen how Arjuna has asked, what is best? Should I renounce my work or perform my duties? And Krishna answers, you have to perform your prescribed duties. And R, what does R stands for?
Rungs of yoga ladder.
Rungs of the yoga ladder. So in this section, we have seen Krishna speaking about how to perform those prescribed duty in a gradual gradation from the consciousness of being the enjoyer of one's action. One can elevate oneself to higher levels of performing the same work by simply changing one's consciousness behind the work. So there are different types of karma. Broadly, they are classified into three. One is vikarma, second is karma, and third is akarma. Vikarma means whimsical actions. So better than that is karma, which is actions performed according to scriptures. And akarma means devotional activities, which yield no reaction, but they lead you to the highest goal of human life. They need to be muted. Okay. So these are the three types of actions, and Krishna spoke about the yoga ladder, how to gradually go from the lower rung. What is the lowest rung of pious work? It is karma kanda. From karma kanda, one can elevate oneself gradually to karma yoga, and the highest The topmost way is Nishkama Karma Yoga, that is performing prescribed duties without desire for the results. And so, actually, I will tell you a simple example to understand this process of yoga ladder. Okay, let's say there is a 20-storied building, and there are two ways to reach the 20th floor. What are the two ways?
Staircase and lift.
Yeah, one is through the stairs and one is the lift. So, which is the easier one? Easier process?
Lift.
Take the lift. So, this whole process of going by the stairs is this yoga ladder, that is gradual elevation from Karma Kanda to Sakama Karma Yoga, then Nishkama Karma Yoga, then Jnana Yoga, then Ashtanga Yoga, then finally Bhakti Yoga. So, it's like taking the stairs. Then, what is the express highway, the elevator? It is Bhakti Yoga. Directly take the process of Bhakti Yoga, you will immediately reach within no time, actually, reach the highest level of perfection without much effort. That is why Bhakti Yoga in the 12th chapter of Gita, Krishna describes it as Susukam Kartum Avyayam. It is very easily performed. So, that kind of an elevator is Bhakti Yoga. So that's what we have seen in the rungs of yoga ladder for the last 3 weeks. So E stands for, what does E stands for?
Exemplary.
Exemplary, performing exemplary actions. And the last E stands for the enemy of the soul. That will be next week. So this week is performing exemplary actions. This week we are going to go a little fast because there are a lot of verses to cover, but I will be halting at the important verses, okay, where we need to actually go into an in-depth discussion. So without further waiting, we will start with text number 17. Yeah. यस्त्वात्मरतिरेव स्याद् आत्मतृप्तश्च मानवः आत्मन्येव च सन्तुष्टस्तस्य कार्यं न विद्यते.
यस्त्व आत्मरतिरेव स्यात् आत्मतृप्तश्च मानवः आत्मन्येव च सन्तुष्टः तस्य कार्यं न विद्यते.
Translation.
But for one who takes pleasure in the self, whose human life is one of the self-realization, and who is satisfied in the self only, fully satiated, for him there is no duty.
Yeah. So till now we have spoken about prescribed duties. Krishna is speaking about prescribed duties and their importance. And Krishna spoke about the yoga ladder and highest level of perfection. So what next? So Krishna is talking about what next. I mean, I have attained the highest stage of perfection. That means I'm performing my duties. I'm not attached to the results at all, even in the slightest trace. So I have received the highest stage. So what is the consciousness of such a person? Such a person is fully satisfied within oneself, and actually, in reality, such a person has no duty at all. He's not obliged to anybody. In fact, Bhagavatam explains, all those runas which we were speaking about, the Daiva run, Pitra run, the various obligations we owe to our forefathers, to the demigods, to the bhutas, to the ancestors, and all are absolved by one shot. That is when a person becomes fully Krishna conscious. This word fully is very important. Yeah, when a person is fully Krishna conscious. So such a person is not obliged by any duty. Okay, he's free from all such obligations. So, but such a perfectional stage should not be imitated, because until such a perfectional stage is reached, one has to continue performing one's prescribed duties, and prematurely, if one gives up the prescribed duty, gradually the person falls down. I will give you a small example, which many have personally seen in our own lives. A person, who came new to Krishna consciousness, they felt, okay, for me, chanting, reading scriptures. This is all everything in life. I don't need to do anything. Say, thinking like this, a person who is in his 40s has given up his own prescribed duties of earning the bread for the family, and kind of started depending upon the wife's income, and he totally gave it up. And so it was a stage of premature renunciation. For few years it went on that way, but after few years that person actually fell prey to many other lowly desires. That means he didn't know what to do with the uh, uh, 24 hours of the day that he has at his disposal. Yeah, for a person to be completely in performing Krishna conscious activities 24 hours a day. Okay, let's take out 8 hours for sleep and other activities, 16 hours to be a full-time devotee. It requires a lot of purification that a person has to go through in the heart. It cannot just happen overnight. So if you prematurely give up your prescribed duties, a person falls down. It should be a gradual process, a gradual progress, and such a perfection. And once the person reaches that perfect stage, then he's not obliged by any duties. But do perfect souls give up their duties altogether? We will see those in the next verses. Text 18. नैव तस्य कृतेनार्थो न कृतेनेह कश्चन न चास्य सर्वभूतेषु कश्चिद् अर्थव्यपाश्रयः.
नैव तस्य कृतेनार्तो न कृतेनेह कश्चन न चास्य सर्वभूतेषु कश्चिदर्थव्यपाश्रया.
Translation.
A self-realized man has no purpose to fulfill in the discharge of his prescribed duties, nor has he any reason not to perform such work, nor has he any need to depend on any other living being.
Yeah, this is the symptoms of a self-realized person. Self-realized person. Why do you call a person liberated? Because he's liberated from all obligatory duties, and he's not dependent on the demigods. I have to please you, then only I will get all these favors from you. No, he's no longer dependent because he understands Krishna as the supreme, and he is the giver of all the benedictions. He no longer depends on the demigods, nor is he dependent on any other living entity. Yeah, it's a natural uh, realization that comes from within. So, text 19. तस्मादसक्त सततं कार्यं कर्म समाचर असक्तो हि आचरन् कर्म परमाप्नोति पुरुषः.
तस्मात् आसक्तः सततं कार्यं कर्म समाचर असक्तो हि आचरन् कर्म परम् आप्नोति पुरुषः.
Translation.
Therefore, without being attached to the fruits of activities, one should act as a matter of duty. For by working without attachment, one attains the supreme.
Yeah. So basically, not being attached to the fruits of one's activities. What does that mean? We have come across this word many times, right? Not being attached to the fruits of one's activities. In Telugu or in Sanskrit, it's called phalapeksha. Phala means fruit. Apeksha means expecting. So phalapeksha. Without phalapeksha, how does a person act? Like, for example, when you are studying, you study so that you get good marks, right? You have some targets to reach. So without having such targets, how would you perform? Practical application, isn't it? So how would you do your own, let's say, how would you do your own education and studies without expecting results? What should be your consciousness?
Everything we do for pleasing Krishna, if we know this, I think we won't get attached to the results, ma'am.
Okay. When we understand that everything we do, we should do for the pleasure of Krishna, we won't be attached to the results. Okay.
Like Mataji, setting goal is important because if we do not set a goal, we cannot reach it. So we must set a goal. But if we are able to have success or failure, we should not get attached to the results. But we should set a goal. That might be.
Yes, very good understanding. Even Bhima had certain set goals. He wanted to kill Dushyasana in a particular way. He wanted to rip his chest apart and drink his blood, and he actually did it. And he wanted to kill all the Kauravas, and he did it. Nobody else touched it. He had his own targets to achieve, and he did achieve them. Yes. Anything else? So what does it mean by working without desire for fruitive results, without being attached to the fruits of the results? Yes.
We should not be carried away by the results. Whatever the result, we have to take it and we have to move on. We should not be carried out. If it is a extraordinary performance, we should not be carried out by it. When it is we fail or something, we should not get low. We should be stable and we should move on with our duties.
Okay, that's a good churning. Sometimes people ask that, yes, I'm not attached to the results, so it doesn't matter how much salt I put in the curry. The person who eats it is the victim. So not being attached does not mean that we are negligent. Not being attached means we do perform our duty in a very dedicated way, but the result should not disturb us. Whether it is a success or a failure, we continue doing it. And if it's a success, fine, offer it to the Lord. If it's a failure, learn from it, but move ahead, go ahead, not being affected. And what exactly is to work on behalf of the Supreme Lord? This is another important question. In regards to this, I'll tell you a small description from Mahabharata. One should actually give more. The highest dharma is to act as per the desire of the Supreme Lord. Even religiosity comes much below that. Like, for example, Dharmaraj, that is Yudhishthir Maharaj, he was very much attached to his own position as the Lord of Dharma. Yeah, Dharmaraju means that he was the Lord of Dharma. So, but if you see in the whole of Mahabharata, in the entire war, there were many instances where Krishna himself has resorted to certain ways of killing some invincible people, which was according to the normal eye or the eye of Dharma. It should not have been so. Like, for example, Dronacharya was killed when he was in meditation. Actually, as per the Kshatriya Dharma, when a person is not actively involved in a war, he's not supposed to be attacked. But Dronacharya was attacked and killed when he was in his meditation. Similarly, Bhishma was killed in when he was rendered weaponless in front of Shikhandini. Yes, and even Karna was killed when he was off the rath, off his chariot, and he was trying to repair the chariot. That was when he was killed. So all these Maharathis were killed in a very in a unusual way, which was not dharmic according to the strict view. But that's what Krishna orchestrated. But when Krishna has orchestrated it, it is the highest dharma. But Dharmaraj, on the other hand, he was attached to his own understanding of what dharma is. That is why Krishna actually tells Dharmaraj at one point of time, you have to lie. What was the lie Krishna wanted Dharmaraj to tell?
Aswadhama atah kunjaraha. Kunjaraha very low.
Yeah, Ashwathama Hataha. That means Dronacharya's son was Ashwathama. So Dronacharya was invincible. Nobody could beat him. He was such a warrior that he could he could actually kill people with his astra or sharp. That means just by his, he knew he was a teacher of all the Pandavas. That means he knew the knowledge of the highest of divine weapons. Not only astra, he could also kill with his sharp. Merely by cursing somebody, he could kill someone. So that was how powerful Dronacharya was. Nobody could beat him, out of question. So for him to be killed, what was his only weakness? The only weakness of Dronacharya was his son Ashwadhama. He was his attachment to his son, basically. So if he was to be told that his son is killed, that is when he would become agitated and he would, just leave everything. That was his only weakness. So, but then Ashwadhama, on the other hand, he had some other benediction because of which he would not be killed in a war field. So what happened? So Krishna told Yudhishthir Maharaj to lie to Dronacharya. And that it was a half lie. Why is it a half lie? Because they had an elephant named Ashwadhama, and that elephant was killed. So the other, in Sanskrit, elephant is called Kunjara. So when Krishna instructed Yudhishthir Maharaj, you go and tell Dronacharya that Ashwadhama is killed. Because if anybody else tells, he won't believe it. But if you go and tell, because you'll never speak a lie, he will believe it. And that is when he will give up fighting. So Yudhishthir Maharaj, he first initially he could not accept. How could I lie? I cannot lie. I mean, I am the Dharmaraj. I cannot lie this way and bring about death to him. It has to be done by fair means. So Krishna told, no, you have to go and tell. So Yudhishthir Maharaj finally goes and tells Ashwadhama loudly, and he says Kunjara softly, Hataha. That means Ashwadhama, Kunjara, the elephant, died. But Dronacharya heard it as Ashwadhama Hataha. That is, Ashwadhama died. And that's when he gives up fighting and he goes into a state of meditation. That's when the army general of the Pandavas, who is the army general of Pandavas?
Drishtadyumna.
Drishtadyumna. Yeah, Drishtadyumna comes and beheads Dronacharya. So is this actually fair or unfair? What do you say? Is this fair or unfair? And why?
Unfair.
It's unfair. Okay. Any other answers?
Because Krishna did it, it is fair, ma'am.
Because Krishna, yeah, because Krishna did it, it is fair. Anybody else wants to oppose this? Yes, okay. So that is why it takes, who is Krishna? Krishna is Dharmam tu Shakshat Bhagavat Pranitam. He is the personality of Godhead, Bhagavan himself, and Dharma is coming from him. So if he is telling you to do something, there is no question of thinking twice whether I have to do it or not. That's what he's telling Arjuna also. I am telling you to fight, so you don't have to think about it. You don't need any logic. Because whatever dharma is ascertained by the Supreme Lord is dharma. But whatever we try to understand with our human intelligence, it need not necessarily be the dharma. For example, you're trying to see it in this small picture of what is the right thing to do and what is the wrong thing to do. But if you strictly go by those norms, then it is impossible to win the war against adharma. And as a result of which adharma will be seated on the throne in future. And as a result of which adharma will prevail all over the world. So to uphold that higher dharma, in Krishna's calculation, this was supposed to be done. And if he has ascertained it and he has tick marked it, that is the supreme dharma. No question. And because Yudhishthir Maharaj has doubted that for a small bit of time, actually he had to pay a price for it also after he left the body. So, so the actual action without attachment to the result actually means to act on behalf of Krishna. That is what Krishna is, Prabhupada is explaining in the purport. To actually act without desire for the result means to act on behalf of Krishna. It's as simple. I gave you once an analogy, an example for this. The same action of killing a person can be either glorified or it can be defamed. Why and how? A soldier who is acting on behalf of the country, when he is fighting on behalf of the country and kills the opposing enemy, then he's glorified. He's given Paramveer Chakra, Mahavir, this and many other titles. But if the same person kills on his own accord, against the rules of the Supreme Court, any of the innocent citizen of the country, and that means he's acting on his own accord, he will be imprisoned. That is the difference between work performed on behalf of the Supreme Lord, how it is glorious. So the key here is to work on behalf of the Supreme Lord. That's when we become naturally detached from the result. Text 20. कर्मणैव हि संसिद्धिम् आसीथ जनकादयः लोकसङ्ग्रहमेवापि सम्पश्यन् कर्तुमर्हसि.
कर्मणैव हि संसिद्धम् आस्थिता जनकादयः लोकसङ्ग्रहमेवापि सम्पश्यन् कर्तुमर्हसि.
Translation.
Kings such as Janaka attained perfection solely by performance of prescribed duties. Therefore, just for the sake of educating the people in general, you should perform your work.
Yeah, imagine Krishna himself is giving the example of a person who actually he has attained the perfection, but he's continuing to perform his duty. We've just said in the previous verses, once you have attained the perfection, you're not obliged by any duties. That means you're not bound by any duties. But does that mean a person who has attained perfection give up his prescribed duties? No, he continues to perform his duties. What is the reason? Because he has to set an example for the common people to follow. And whose example did he give? He gave the example of Janaka. Who is Janaka? Who is Janaka Maharaj?
Father of Sita.
Yes, father of Mother Sita. Does anybody know what is the name of this Janaka Maharaj? There are actually many Janakas. Janaka is like, let's say I can tell you it's, your second name. Okay, so who exactly is the father of Mother Sita? Which Janaka is he? Anybody remembers? Okay, he's Shiradhvaja Janaka. Okay, so Janaka means it's a title given to the kings that are coming from Mithi Janaka, who was the first Janaka who came. And from him, all his descendants are called Janakas, I think. And the father of Mother Sita is the 10th or 11th Janaka, and he's called the Shiradhvaja Janaka. And he has two daughters, Mother Sita and Urmila, who later on happened to become the consorts of Lord Ram and Lakshmana. So this Janaka, Shiradhvaja Janaka, he's a perfected being. He has perfected his life. He's a self-realized soul. So much so, the country which he ruled is called Mithila. Mithila was also called Videha. Yeah, Videha. That's why another name of Mother Sita is Vaidehi. So Videha means, Deha means body. Videha means who are beyond the bodily conception. That means all of us are trying to understand that we are not this body, we are the soul. But the people of Videha, they are born with the realization that they are not the body, but they are the souls. So all the praja of Videha are all realized, self-realized. And Janaka Maharaj, above all, was that self-realized person who has perfected his life, but he had continued to perform his duties to set an example for all the followers, for all his citizens. And Krishna is quoting his example in Gita. they Janakadaya, these people have not given up their prescribed duties because they have to set an example for the general populace. And Krishna now speaks about what is the need to set an example. Text 21. Yad yad acharati shreshtas evetaro jana sayat pramanam kurute lokastad anuvartate.
यत् यत् आचरति श्रेष्ठ तत्तत् एव इतरो जनः स यत् प्रमाणं कुरुते लोकस्तत् अनुवर्तते.
Translation.
Whatever action a great man performs, common men follow, and whatever standards he set by exemplary acts, all the world pursues.
Yeah, this is the most important theme that today we would be discussing. So this is about leadership. So leadership is one of the most the in terms in the modern education. There are so many seminars that are conducted in leadership. In fact, I have personally designed a course on leadership, which is one of the most followed in the IIMs today, the Indian Institute of Management. It was called Culture of Leadership. So I was happy to be a part of that leadership course. So before we get into it, I want to hear from you. What, according to you, is leadership in one word?
Being people's person.
People's person is leadership. Okay. Any other?
One who shows the way to others.
Oh, Disha. Yes, actually, it's in your name. Very good. One who shows the direction. That's what you said?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. Any other? What comes to your mind when we speak about leadership?
Responsibility and taking correct decisions.
Responsibility. Yes. If only the leaders of today can take leadership as a responsibility and not a position, the world would have been much different place to live in. Yeah, it's a responsibility. It's a grave responsibility. In fact, the scriptures tell that one should not become a guru. Guru na sasyat, sajanani sati. One should not become a guru or a mother or a father or a teacher if a person cannot liberate their dependents from the clutches of birth and death. Namochayet samapaiti mrityum. If you cannot liberate your dependents from the clutches of the bondage of death, birth and death, if you cannot liberate them, then you should not become a guru or a mother or a father or a teacher. So it's such a responsibility. Yeah, it's a very big responsibility.
Selflessness.
Selflessness, yes, that's also a quality of leader. These are all qualities. Administration. Yeah.
Should be an acharya. He should follow it himself and teach.
Yes, Acharya. Srinaji also says to be exemplary through one's actions, to set an example. Yes, yes. These are all, things that describe a true leader. Okay. So, as you said, a true leader is one who gives direction, who gives, spoke about many things, many other qualities, a responsibility. So for all this to happen, as Disha said, a leader should be able to give direction. So for a leader to give direction, he should know the direction, right? If not, the modern day leadership is described in one sentence: blind leading the blind. When a blind person is leading the blind, all of them will go and simply fall in a ditch. Or it's like, you know, you're sitting in a jet, and if the jet is going up the sky in high speed, and you ask the pilot two questions. The first question, uh, how are we going? They say, so the pilot answers, we are going at so many kilometers per hour, and the weather is totally in our favor. Then you ask, where are we going? And the pilot says, I don't know. Can you imagine being being in such a jet plane that you're going, and but you don't know where you're going. So similarly, we're all actually performing so many actions, so many duties, and are involved in so many activities every day on a day-to-day basis, you know, working hard to organize ourselves and being productive and doing something. But if we do not answer that why in our life, then all these things only result in, you know, going, passing through some years and then looking back and seeing, you know, what did I do? That is why there's a famous book called Simon Sinek. I don't know if you've heard of this very big corporate writer and famous TEDx speaker, the very big man, Simon Sinek. His books are like the biggest leadership sutras for all the current leaders, actually. He wrote a nice book called Start with Why. In that, he explains about the most successful leaders are those who know their why. Yeah, to know the why is one of the most important questions we need to answer in our lives. Like, for example, I'm doing my engineering. Why? I want to build a career. Why? So I want to be successful in life. Why? I want to take up to spiritual life. Why? For a person whose why is clear, they grow up to become exemplary leaders. In fact, they are the people who have answered their why. They are the people only who become the leaders. Because if they don't know their why, they cannot give the why to their followers. Simple. Leader means a person who has a vision, who gives direction. He can give direction because he has a vision. And who are the people who have vision and direction? Those who are spiritually educated. That is why spiritual leadership is one of the most successful leadership. A person who can connect to the higher truths, who can connect their profession to the higher truths, they are the people who can lead their people into a life of practicality, spirituality, self-realization, and fulfillment. But if the leader is simply motivated by some mere economic goals, that's where he's leading all his people into. And having attained those goals, neither is the leader happy nor are the followers. I'll give you one glorious example of how some exemplary leaders of the past. Like, have you heard of King Kulashekar Alvar? He's a 12th century king. So this king, he was a king of the Chera dynasty, king of if you go down South India, there is a place called Ananta Padmanabh temple. It was in the news for many reasons. I don't know have you heard of Ananta Padmanabh Swami temple and all the treasures that were found there? Few years back, it made major news. Yeah, you all heard, right? Yes. So one of the king who ruled that province of Trivandrum back in the 12th century was King Kulashekar Alvar. So Alvars are Tamil saints. They were saints because they have reached very high level of God consciousness, and they have expressed it through most of their poetic works. And some of the poetic works we still read and study till date. So Kulashekar Alvar, as I said, he was a king of Chera dynasty, and he was such a devoted king. He was so devoted to his lord Sri Ananta Padmanabh Swami, that every day he used to go to the temple and he used to stand in front of the deity and he used to tell the Lord, my dear Lord, this is how your kingdom is functioning. This is how much of profits that have come about. This is what is going on in your country. This is how much harvest we have received, etc. He used to give a whole account of the everyday affairs to the Lord. That means he's just working as a trustee, and he has recognized Krishna as the actual owner of the entire province, and he himself put himself as the trustee. So this is called exemplary leadership. It means the king himself has understood who is the owner of everything, and he accepted himself as a trustee. And when a king follows these ideals, it is but natural for the whole praja to follow it. Yatha raja tatha praja. And similarly, we see many other kings who have lived a life of such dedication and devotion to the Lord. Many leaders, who were actually practicing the principles of Gita in their life, and thereby lived as exemplary leaders. It's simple. If the king is exemplary, and actually at the time of Ramayana, we all heard of something called Ramarajya. Ramarajya means all the people used to follow their duties perfectly well, and the king is the most qualified. And when the kingdom is it's running on that basis of everybody following their dharma perfectly well, then all the calamities are kept at bay. So much so, there was nothing called akala mrityu. These days, we are seeing so many deaths. For example, Corona, so many people, young people were dying. A lot of college students died because of the second wave of the pandemic. So many middle-aged people, 30s, 40s, they have died. But this is unheard of at the time of Ramarajya, Akala Mrityu. So much so that once one Brahmana's son has died untimely. And when he died untimely, this Brahmana actually went to the court of Lord Ram and questioned him, my dear Lord, how come my son has died so early? And Ram had to actually answer him and bring his son back to life. He went into the kingdom and did a research as to how this mishap has happened, and where dharma got deviated, and he had to set that right, and eventually his son actually came back to life. This was how the results are when everybody follows their prescribed duties properly. Now we can't even think of a situation that if somebody dies untimely and we go to the prime minister and ask, how can my child or my neighbor die so untimely? Now we accept it as anything can happen in this world, because everybody is performing actions as per their own whims and fancies. We cannot expect the ideal things to happen in this world. We are living in a very non-ideal world. It's how far we have deviated from the idealistic norms. So that is about being an exemplary leader, and where dharma is properly established. And as I said, and main qualification of being an exemplary leader is one is oneself situated in the codes of the scriptures. That's what Prabhupada explains. That means they have themselves, like as I told about all these kings. Kings are performing their duties perfectly well, having recognized Krishna as a supreme proprietor. How did they get to that? They all are trained by the Brahmanas right from childhood. Only when they are trained in their childhood, that's when they can grow up and become the kings. Without such training, nobody enters into the position of responsibility. Yeah, but such training is lacking in the modern day world. For people these days, leadership means just climbing up the corporate ladder, or getting a position or a seat or getting a title. So leadership is not a title, it's not a position, it is a responsibility one has to execute for the good of one's dependents. And And leadership need not just be somebody in the company sitting on a chair with a suit boot, or not just somebody who is sitting in the cabinet of the prime minister's office. Our own parents are our leaders. Just being a father or a mother, for a small child, her father or his father is the hero. They don't know any other person other than that. In fact, the child thinks my father can do anything. So parents and teachers are natural leaders of the society, because they are the people who impact the children the maximum. And whatever principles the parents are following, that naturally are imbibed by the children, very naturally. And being properly situated in our own knowledge of what is the ultimate goal of life, and being in our own god-given position and executing our own duties, we can be the best leader. And executing simply that leadership, we can go back to godhead. I will give you a small example from the Shastras. So this is the story of Dhruva Maharaj. So Dhruva Maharaj, he was the son of King Uttanapad. So King Uttanapad had two wives. The two wives' names are Suniti and Suruchi. So Suruchi was his dear wife, whom he favored more. And Suniti is the mother of Dhruva Maharaj, whom the king did not favor much. She was not his favorite queen. So what happened? One day, Dhruva Maharaj came to his father's court, and he saw his brother, that is the son of Suruchi, playing on the lap of his father. So he also wanted to go and sit on his father's lap, just like a small child. So he went to sit on his father's lap, but Uttanapad uh, was, he initially embraced him and made him sit on the lap, but Suniti, she just came rushing and she dragged Dhruva Maharaj out of his father's lap. And she spoke harsh words to him. She said, "My dear boy, if you were to play on the lap of your father, then you will have to take birth from my womb. Only then you will be eligible to play on the lap of your father. Now get away from here." When she spoke these words really struck the heart of Dhruva Maharaj very badly. It shattered his heart into pieces. And he was a Kshatriya by blood. You know, how are Kshatriyas, whenever such harsh words are spoken, immediately retaliation comes about. It's there in their blood. They want to retaliate. But she's the mother of Dhruva Maharaj. So he didn't speak anything, but he rushed out of the kingdom, out of his father's palace, and he went to his mother, Suniti. So when he went to his mother, Suniti said, he went and explained all what has happened. He went in vengeance. I mean, he was hissing like a snake. He had tears coming out of his eyes. He became reddish, and he was breathing heavily with such anger. And he went and he met his mother in the next chamber. And she already heard from one of the dasis what has happened. So when Dhruva Maharaj went to her and he started explaining her all what has happened, what was the reaction of Suniti? Suniti said, "My dear child, yes, the truth is that I am not as much favored by your father as much as your stepmother Suruchi is favored. And she said, first thing she told him is that do not wish anything unkind upon your stepmother. And she said, and if you want answer to your questions as to why you're going through this painful situation, none of us can give you the answer. Only Lord Vishnu can answer you and pacify you." So she directed him to the Supreme Lord. And so Dhruva Maharaj asked in all innocence, "Where will I find Lord Vishnu?" So she told him he will be in forest. So Dhruva Maharaj immediately set out. He went, all the way to the forest. to have the darshan of Lord Vishnu and talk to him. He went out with the desire that I want a kingdom that is bigger than my grandfather's kingdom. Like, who is the grandfather of Dhruva Maharaj? Lord Brahma himself. So I want a kingdom bigger than my grandfather's. I will go and ask Lord Vishnu for that. So with that desire, he actually set out from his home, full force and full of emotions. So who gave him this direction? His mother. And Suniti, she was such a wonderful, she just, what was the qualification that she had? She simply made peace with her karma. She didn't retaliate or combat. She understood that, okay, my husband did not favor me much. Fine, that's my destiny. And she made peace with it. And she didn't want to counter that. And when the time came and when she knew her son was in danger and when he needed direction, she directed him towards the Supreme. And what was the result? Dhruva Maharaj goes, and on the way Narada Muni meets him. There's an excellent, beautiful conversation in the Bhagavatam, 4th canto, that takes place. And after that, he goes to the jungles and performs severe tapasya, severe penances, so much though all the planetary systems started getting choked up by the power of and intensity of his tapasya. And finally, Lord Vishnu, Prishnigarbha himself descends and he blesses Dhruva Maharaj profusely. And actually, when Dhruva Maharaj sees Lord Vishnu face to face, he was so captivated by his presence and beauty that he at once felt ashamed that, oh, what all I wanted to ask the Lord. But, he felt that I was searching for broken pieces of glasses. But here is it, I have found a real valuable gem. So, all his material desires for this kingdom bigger than his grandfather and his vengeance, all these were like broken pieces of glasses. Just like today, we're all searching for so many broken pieces of glasses in our own life. But when we actually come face to face with God, with Krishna, we understand that all that we are searching for are not more worthy than broken pieces of glasses. The real worth is in the gem. The gem is Krishna. So that's what he realized. And he offers such beautiful prayers. These beautiful prayers are sung in Bhagavatam. Amazing prayers, very sweet. They're celebrated by all the great saints. And towards the end, actually, Krishna gives a benediction that, yes, you will have a kingdom greater than your grandfather, Brahma. That's why there is Dhruva Loka. Yeah, the pole star is nothing but the Dhruva Loka. And he says, you will go, you'll perform your duties as a king. See, again, here even at the time Krishna gave his darshan, he didn't say, okay, now you go back to Godhead. No, he said, now go back to your home and you will be the next successor to your father and complete your duties as a king on this earth. And then at the end of life, you will go back to Godhead. I mean, and he said he also gave him Dhruva Loka. And when he was going, so Dhruva Maharaj thanked him profusely and he went back to his mother and he grew up, he became the king. And at the end of life, when he was going to Vaikunta, so along with him, another plane came, Vaikunta plane came. And for whom was that extra Vaikunta plane? That was for his mother. Why? Simply because she has given him the direction. So that was a gratitude he had for his mother. Dhruva Maharaj was not like, yeah, the Vaikunta plane came for me, bye, all of you. No, he said, I want my mother to come first because she's the one who gave me the direction. So this is how Dhruva Maharaj's mother, Suniti, she has attained the perfection of life simply being naturally situated in her position and simply by playing the role of a true leader. A true leader means she has directed her child towards the Lord at the time of crisis. Just by doing these two things, she went back to Godhead. That's the ultimate perfection for which everybody is, struggling from, birth after birth. She has simply attained that by making peace with her situation and giving the right direction. That is leadership. That is spiritual leadership that we see in the life of the mother of Dhruva Maharaj, Suniti. Okay, let's carry on. Name pathasti kartavyam trishu lokeshu kinchana nanavaptam avaptavyam varta eva cha karmani.
न मे पार्थास्ति कर्तव्यं त्रिषु लोकेषु किञ्चन नानवाप्तमवाप्तव्यं वर्त एव च कर्मणि.
Translation.
O son of Partha, there is no work prescribed for me within all the three planetary systems, nor am I in want of anything, nor have I a need to obtain anything, and yet I am engaged in prescribed duties.
So Krishna is telling Arjuna that I do not have any prescribed duties, because Krishna means he is the supreme personality of Godhead. Natasya karyam karanam cha vidyate. He has no duty to perform. Shvetashvatara Upanishad explains Natasya karyam karanam cha vidyate. There is no prescribed duty or obligatory work for the supreme personality of Godhead. Yet, when he descends to this world, he executes his duties. For example, if you see the whole in Bhagavatam 10th canto, it describes the daily routine of Lord Krishna in Dwaraka. What he does when he wakes up. He wakes up early in the morning. He does his meditation. And then he performs his duties as a king. He gives so much of charity to the brahmanas. All the prescribed duties of a king he performs without any deviation and to the best possible extent. So why does he need to do all these activities? He is not bound by any actions, or he is not bound by any duty or any obligation. But he simply does that because he sets an example. So is the example of Lord Ramachandra. When he descends, he sets the example of, he's a Maryada Purushottam. Yeah, he sets the example of being a perfect son, perfect husband, perfect brother, perfect father. Yeah, all these, and of course, the perfect king. So that's what he has exemplified through his roles in Ramayana. Yeah. Yadi hyaham na varteyam jatu karmanya tandrita mama vatmanu vartante manushya patha sarvashah.
यदि हि अहं न वर्तव्यं जातु कर्मणि यतीन्द्रितः मम वर्तम् अनुवर्तन्ते मनुष्याः पार्थ सर्वशः.
This translation.
For if I ever fail to engage in carefully performing prescribed duties, O Partha, certainly all men would follow my path.
Yeah, so Krishna is telling, because if I don't set the example, people will quote it as an example, and they deviate from their path. That is why the Lord sets the example to follow. So again, Krishna further explains what happens if he does not perform his prescribed duties. Utsire yurime loka nakuryam karma chedaham sankarasya cha kartasyam upahanyami ma prajaha.
उत्सीदेयुरिमे लोका न कुर्यां कर्म चेदहं शङ्करस्य च कर्तास्यामुपहन्यामि मा प्रजा.
Translation.
If I did not perform prescribed duties, all these worlds would be put into ruination. I would be the cause of creating unwanted population, and I would thereby destroy the peace of all living beings.
Yeah, so Krishna is saying if he does not perform his prescribed duties, then all common men would follow that example as the norm, and thereby everybody would go to hell. Yeah. Text 25. Satta karmanya vidmamso yatha kurvanti bharata kuryad vidvams tatha saktash chikirshur loka sangraham.
सक्ता कर्म
सक्ताः कर्मणि अविद्वांसो यथा कुर्वन्ति भारत कुर्यात् विद्वान् तथा असक्तः चिकीर्षुः लोकसङ्ग्रहम्.
As the ignorant, okay, sorry, read the translation.
As the ignorant perform their duties with attachment to results, the learned may similarly act but without attachment for the sake of leading people on the right path.
Yeah. So basically, what differentiates a person acting in knowledge and a person who is ignorant? Apparently, if you see, the actions are same, but what differentiates them is their desire. For example, externally, what Arjuna and Duryodhana were performing are the same acts. They are performing war, different, probably with different weapons, but they are at war with each other. Yeah, they're fighting the battle. Externally, both the activities are same. But what differentiated Duryodhana from Arjuna? Their desire. Arjuna's desire was to establish dharma, to please the Supreme Lord Krishna. But Duryodhana's desire was he simply wanted to be the king and rule over. So that's what differentiated their actions. So everything is in the consciousness more than the activity. न बुद्धिभेदं जनयेत् अज्ञानां कर्मसङ्गिनां जोषयेत् सर्वकर्माणि विद्वान् युक्तः समाचरन्.
बुद्धिभेदं जनयेत् अज्ञानां कर्मसङ्गिनां जोषयेत् सर्वकर्माणि विद्वान् युक्तः समाचरन्.
Yes. Translation.
So as not to disrupt the minds of ignorant men attached to the fruitive results of prescribed duties, a learned person should not induce them to stop work. Rather, by working with spirit of devotion, he should engage them in all sorts of activities for the gradual development of Krishna consciousness.
Yeah. So basically, there are people who are attached to their fruitive results, and thereby they are engaging in their prescribed duties. So a person in knowledge need not, gate crash into their life and stop them from their prescribed duties, saying that you should not perform fruitive acts, you should give them up and deviate from their prescribed duties. We have to take person from where they are, and it's a gradual upgradation. It's not abrupt. So that's why a learned man continues to perform his duty so as not to disturb the people in general outside. So it's a responsibility, as you said. One of you said leadership is a responsibility. Prakrite, this is a very important verse. Prakrite kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvashah ahankara vimudhatma kartaham iti manyate.
प्रकृतेः क्रियकर्माणि गुणैः कर्माणि सर्वशः अहंकार विमूढात्मा कर्ताहम् इति मन्यते.
Yes. Translation.
The spirit soul, bewildered by the influence of false ego, thinks himself the doer of activities that are in actuality carried out by the three modes of material nature.
Yeah. So a person who is bewildered by the three modes, the modes of ignorance, passion, and goodness, they think that I am the doer. I am the doer of the activities. But these activities are in fact carried on by the modes of material nature. Just like the strings are attached to the puppets. Yeah. So when a child is seeing from the other side, what does he see? He sees the puppets dancing, talking, acting, and the whole show runs. So you get so absorbed in the show, so much so for a point of time you start thinking, yes, the dolls are actually true, they're living, and they are actually the doers of the action. But in reality, who is moving them? The puppeteer. So Krishna is the supreme puppeteer, and his assistants are the three modes: goodness, passion, and ignorance. And just like these the puppeteer moves the strings and the puppets move, the three modes move the strings and we move, or we perform activities. So the modes of the material natures are the doers. Modes in the sense, yeah, Krishna is the supreme puppeteer, and these modes are acting under his direction. And under his direction, when these modes are acting, based on their actions, we are performing our activities. But Vimudhatma, that means a person who is bewildered by the false ego thinks that I am the doer. Yes, it takes a lot of realization to get here. Until then, we should know we are the Vimudhas. Text 28. Tattvavittu mahabaho guna karma vibhagayo guna guneshu vattanta iti matva na sajjate.
तत्त्ववित्तु महाबाहो गुणकर्मा विभागयो गुणागुणेषु वर्तन्त इति मत्वा न सज्जते.
Translation.
One who is in knowledge of absolute truth, O mighty armed, does not engage himself in the senses and sense gratification, knowing well the differences between work in devotion and work for fruitive results.
Yeah, so basically what happens is a person in knowledge will get something called Jnana Chakshu. So in the beginning of our class, what we are all praying for, Ajnana Timirandasya Jnana Anjana Shalakaya. That means Ajnana Timirandasya, we are actually lost in the darkest of ignorance. We don't even know what the truth is. But by the spiritual master or guru, by his mercy, is anointing our eyes with the salve or ointment of knowledge. And when our eyes are sufficiently anointed with knowledge, we are able to see things in truth, in reality. Until then, what we see and what we believe is the truth is that, in fact, illusion. But once we get Jnana Chakshu, what is the result of such Jnana Chakshu? We'll be able to discriminate between what is matter, what is spirit, what is real and what is illusory, what is temporary, what is permanent, what is Shreyas and what is Preyas, what is ultimate good and what is temporary good. All this will be clearly visible. And based on that, the decisions have such clarity. That is why the basis of leadership should be SQ, a well-developed spiritual quotient. That is when that leadership will be a legacy that will be worshipped for generations and generations. Yeah. So that is, and for that, what happens is a person who is spiritually enlightened, he understands the purpose. The why is the purpose. So I'll give you a small example. What happens if we lose our purpose, if we forget our purpose? If you are into architecture or if you have a taste for interiors, in the modern day, what's happening is there are more and more construction of toilets. Yeah, you heard it right, toilets, which are very sophisticated. Yeah, sophisticated in the sense, at within the toilet there is the potty, the commode. Yeah, and not just that, there is also a tea maker or a coffee machine, or just close to that is a sofa, and close to that is also a small bit of library where you can pull out books and read, and all this is there within the bathroom. I'm sure my Geetaka is not going to like this much, but and this is the fact. Yeah, there is a sofa, there is a coffee machine, there is a small library, there is a music system. Yeah, and there's a small coffee table and a small dining table as well. All this within the bathroom, along with the commode. What happens if the bathroom becomes so sophisticated? A person who enters it, if he forgets the purpose why they have gone there. Isn't it? Similarly, this material world is compared to a toilet. There is a reason why we have come here. The reason is purification. One has to rectify one's rebellious nature and be liberated from it and go back to our eternal blissful home, back to Godhead. That's the purpose. It is a configuration. But if we make our lives too complex with many unwanted things, just like a person who enters this bathroom forgets the purpose by which they have come, we forget the purpose why we are in this material world. So our scriptures And sadhus, they come to remind us of the purpose why we are here. Text 29. Prakriterguna sammudha sajjante guna karmasu tana kritsna vido mandan kritsna vinna vichalayet.
प्रकृतिर्गुणसमूढाः सज्जन्ते गुणकर्मसु तान् कृत्स्नं विदो मन्दान् कृत्स्नं विद्म विचालयेत्.
Translation.
Bewildered by the modes of material nature, the ignorant fully engage themselves in material activities and become attached. But the wise should unsettle them. Although these duties are inferior due to the performer's lack of knowledge.
Yeah, so the wise should not unsettle them, although these duties are inferior to the performance lack of knowledge. So what Krishna is telling here is there are people who are simply engaged in their prescribed duties for the desire of sense gratification. So as I said, we should not just gate crash into their lives and just stop them from performing what they're doing because they're doing what they're doing. But the devotees of the Lord, they are very, very, they're more compassionate than the Supreme Lord himself. That is why they take this responsibility on behalf of the Lord and actually go door to door preaching the message of God to others. Because if not for their mercy, they will never be freed from this Ferris wheel of birth, death, old age, and disease. It's the same wheel they are going, birth after birth, birth after birth, birth after birth, millions of births. There's no freedom from that ever until they hear the message of the scriptures. 30. This is also a very important verse. Mayi sarvani karmani sanyasyadhyatma chetasa nirashi nirmamo bhutva yudhyasva vigatas jvara.
मयि सर्वाणि कर्माणि सन्न्यस्याध्यात्मचेतसा निराशीर्निर्ममो भूत्वा युध्यस्व विगतज्वरा.
Yes.
Therefore, O Arjuna, surrendering all your works unto me with full knowledge of me, without desires for profit, with no claims to proprietorship, and free from lethargy, fight.
Yeah, so Krishna gave his instruction. Now fight. How, and he also told how you should fight. What is the attitude that you need to cultivate? He's just kind of summarizing the entire concept of Nishkama Karma Yoga in these three important words. What are these three important words? Nirashi nirmamo bhutva yuddhasva vigatajvara. Nirashir means without desire for any profit. Nirmama. Nirmama means without any sense of ownership. Yuddhasva vigatajvara. Vigatajvara means by leaving behind lethargy. So Nirashi, Nirmamo, and Vigatajvara. These three are very, very important words. It's a summary of the entire Karma Yoga. How should one work? Nirashi, without desire for profit. Nirmama, without a sense of ownership, and without lethargy. Some people think, okay, now I'm not the owner, so okay, I don't even have desire for profits. Okay, so what? Why should I work? No, give up that lethargy, that feverish mentality. Because I'm not expecting any results, that does not mean that you become lazy and get into inaction. No, work in a dedicated way. So how does a person work? There's a nice analogy that is given by Prabhupada in the purport. He says that just like how a cashier counts so much of money, right? Counts lots and lots of money in a day, sometimes lakhs and crores maybe. But with what kind of a feeling? He handles money, but he knows it does not belong to him. He simply performs his duty, just gives it, not touched by it. So that should be the attitude of the performer of activity. Yeah, when it comes to the results, he's handling it, but he's not attached to it, knowing that I'm just a cashier in this bank of God-given duties. Another example that is given, for example, especially women when they're at home, they take care of so much of so many relationships, take care of the children, the family members, everybody. So then as they grow older and older, some of them, they ask these questions: how can we be not attached? We have raised them, and we have, we are emotionally bonded to them. It's okay to be bonded, but it should not become a bondage. And to maintain that thin line of difference is what is being in knowledge. And what should be, and how should one perform one's duties at home as a mother or as a housewife? The example is given as that of a nurse. A nurse, she's very loving, she's very compassionate. I mean, I'm talking about the good nurses. She's very kind, she's loving, she's caring, and she does all the works, I mean, that is needed to help the patient. Yeah, such service she does with such dedication and such affection. But when it's 9 o'clock, her time is over. She just wraps up everything, packs her bag, and goes back home. Similarly, that's how a housewife should perform her duties of loving and caring for her people in the house, to give them one's service, one's affection, one's attention, one's utmost care, everything. But when time comes to call it off, yes, wrap it and move to the next destination. This is ideally what it should be. So we all know that it's a journey. It's not that today I understood this reality and tomorrow I'm jumping into it. It's a journey a person has to go through, and it happens gradually through purification of one's heart. So this whole concept of karma yoga, the result that we are expecting out of it is to purify our heart and to revive our original nature. That is the purpose of performing this entire karma yoga. So 31. Ye me matamidam nityam anutishtanti manavaha shraddhavanto nasuyanto muchyante karmabhi.
ये मे मतमिदं नित्यम् अनुतिष्ठन्ति मानवाः श्रद्धावन्तो अनुसूयन्तो मुच्यन्ते ते अपि कर्मभिः.
Yeah, translation.
Those persons who execute their duties according to my injunctions and who follow this teaching faithfully without envy become free from the bondage of fruitive actions.
Yeah, so here two important words again are Shraddhavanto, Anasuyanto. So how should one execute their duties according to the injunctions given? What does it take? Shraddha. Shraddha means faith. Faith is the currency. It's a substance through which you see the invisible, you feel the intangible, and you achieve the impossible. That is what faith can do to a person. Faith is, in something that is sublime. So in the scriptures speak about so many things. That is, Krishna is speaking about so many systems, so many ways of performing acts. And one should follow these injunctions with faith that yes, if I simply follow what Krishna is telling, I will reach the highest destination. In fact, this is the definition of Vyavasayatmika Buddhi that Prabhupada has given in the second chapter, Vyavasayatmika Buddhi Ekeha Kurunandana. What is the definition of Vyavasayatmika Buddhi? Simply by executing Krishna consciousness, one can achieve the highest perfection of life. To have faith in this itself is Vyavasayatmika Buddhi, to be resolute in purpose. And how does this, next question is, how do I develop this faith? So we all come with some quantity of faith that is coming from previous lives, due to ajnata sukritis and past sukritis, past pious activities, and our past engagement in different devotional activities. We all come with certain percentage of faith that we're carrying from previous lives. And this faith is bolstered or increased when we come in the association of those who have the faith. It's simple. If there is an iron rod, and when this iron rod is placed in fire for a long time, what happens? This iron rod becomes red hot, and it acquires the property of the fire. So much so, the same iron rod which was once cold, and now if you just touch it anywhere, it chars because it has acquired the property of fire. How? Because it was in touch with the fire. Similarly, if you want to develop faith, be in association of those who have faith. And gradually our faith is enhanced. And that is a currency by which one can actually practice the spiritual life. And one is Shraddhavantu. Second is Anasuyantu, envious. Envious nature. That means why, Krishna, there are some Telugu songs, I think, in which they start telling, my dear Lord, you have thrown us into this dreadful material world and you are enjoying there. That means you're envious of the Lord. No, but that is not how you can approach the Supreme. Anasuyanto, be non-envious of Lord. So one should have faith and one should be non-envious. And in that mood, one should follow the injunctions given by Krishna. And by constantly doing so, one is sure to achieve the perfection and become freed from the bondage of these fruitive actions. 32. ये त्वेतद् अभ्यसूयन्तो नानुतिष्ठन्ति मे मतं सर्वज्ञानाविमूढांस्तान् विद्धि नष्टान चेतसः.
ये त्वेतदभ्यसूयन्तो नानुतिष्ठन्ति मे मतं सर्वज्ञानाविमूढांस्तान् विद्धि नष्टान् अचेतसः.
Yeah, translation.
But those who, out of envy, disregard these teachings and do not follow them regularly are to be considered bereft of all knowledge, befooled, and ruined in their endeavors for perfection.
Yeah, so Krishna is also giving the other side of the coin. Krishna has told about what are all the great things you can achieve when you're faithful, when you're non-envious, and when you're consistent in your endeavors. And especially Krishna guards so many times against imitation. Says be practical and be at the level where you are. Don't try to imitate the perfected beings. On the other hand, Krishna is giving the other side of the coin. What will happen if you're envious and if you decide not to follow these teachings? So Krishna is telling they're ruined in their endeavors for perfection. Yeah, they're befooled. Yeah, they're befooled because it is said that if we are not following our spiritual path, that means we are cheating ourselves of all the bliss and happiness that is our original nature. We are just keeping ourselves from that ecstatic happiness by not choosing to follow the spiritual path. Okay, so practicing spirituality is actually self-compassion. Text 33. Sadrisham cheshtate svasyaah prakrite jnanavaanapi prakritim yanti bhutani nigraha kim karishyati.
सदृशं चेष्टते स्वयायाः प्रकृतिर्ज्ञानवानपि प्रकृतिं यान्ति भूतानि निग्रहः किं करिष्यति.
Yes, translation.
Even a man of knowledge acts according to his own nature, for everyone follows the nature he has acquired from the three modes. What can a repression accomplish?
Yes, nigraham krim karishyati. That means what can repression accomplish? So Krishna is telling very clearly, now do not be true to your nature. Do not artificially try to imitate other person. Nigrah, and do not try to artificially suppress, what your nature is. Act according to your nature. This is where Krishna is actually leading the reader to the next situation. That means one has to gradually evolve to a position. Not getting, it is said one should learn to be an evolutionary, not revolutionary. Yeah. Revolutionary means overnight Paramhamsa. Overnight, okay, I give up everything and I surrender to Krishna and so be it. I don't want to, I surrender to the spiritual process and nothing can stop me. Such an abrupt thing is not recommended. Krishna is telling evolve. Yeah. Nigraha kim karishati means what can repression accomplish. Do not be artificial. Do not try to imitate. So be the person you are and gradually evolve by taking small steps. Yeah, so Krishna is telling, it is, Prabhupada explains, it is better to be situated in one's position and to try to attain Krishna consciousness under superior training. Thus, one may be freed from the clutches of Krishna's Maya. Yeah, so and also simply by attaining some theoretical knowledge, it is not possible to give up attachments. Yeah, acquiring knowledge is at one level, but to actually realize that knowledge, we have to put it into practice. And when you are sincerely practicing and endeavoring, when this endeavor attracts the mercy of Krishna, that's when our knowledge transforms into realization. That's when the jnana transforms into vijnana. And that is why these have to be performed under the guidance of an expert who is a mentor or a spiritual teacher. That is why we should connect ourselves to a Guru Parampara. 34, last two verses. Indriyasyendriya Indriyasyendriyasyarthe ragadvesho vyavasthitau tayorna vashamagachet tauhyasya paripanthinau.
इन्द्रियस्येन्द्रियस्यार्थे रागद्वेषो व्यवस्थितौ तयोर्नावशमगच्छेत् तौ ह्यस्य परिपन्थिनौ.
Yeah, translation.
There are principles to regulate attachment and aversion pertaining to the senses and their objects. One should not come under the control of such attachment and aversion because they are stumbling blocks on the path of self-realization.
Yeah. So basically, initially, there is something called, there are rules and regulations. So a person does initially probably have some desires for sense enjoyment, but there is also a system that is given as per Vedic injunctions, following which a person can fulfill that need for sense enjoyment and not become entangled. Yeah, entangled in the sense, or punished. Like, for example, a person might have the desire to enjoy with the opposite sex. It's a natural instinct of every person who has grown up. Yeah, so such a desire should be fulfilled in the system of the sacred marriage. So vivaha samskara, it's a purifying action. It's a purifying rites that is given by, that is sanctioned by the Shastras, by the Vedas. So when a person enters into the nuptial knot and lives in a marriage and then fulfills one's desires, then that person is not even artificially entangled. Yeah, or it is not a sinful way of living. On the other hand, if the same person, for fulfilling such desires, enters into relationships outside marriage, then that leads to a lot of reactions, karmic reactions, which a person has to bear in so many ways. So unfortunately, our education system is so designed that, okay, at least in India it's fine, but in the West, there is so much of free mixing between the opposite genders, girls and boys, and in the name of education institutions, you won't believe, in the West, in all the educational institutions, especially top institutions, there are no separate hostels for boys and girls. It's just one hostel, and they stay together. And we can imagine what all can happen, and better not to imagine also. So that kind of a way, it's because that is the kind of leadership that country has. And as a result of which, these are the policies that these, policy makers are making. And the common men are simply following those policies. And they have come to an understanding that it's normal. But what is happening as a result is, because it is said ignorance of law is no excuse. By not understanding these laws of human civilizations, when they break it, they have to pay the reaction, the price for, which comes as karmic reactions. So that is why it is important to understand what is a regulated way of life. Text 35. Shreyan swadharmo viguna paradharmat svanustishtatat swadharme nidhanam shreya paradharmo bhayavaha.
Shreyan swadharmo vigunaha pardharmat svanushtitat swadharme nidhanam shreya pardharmo bhayavaha.
That's the final verse.
It is far better to discharge one's prescribed duties even though faulty than others' duties perfectly. Distraction in the course of performing one's own duty is better than engaging in others' duties, for to follow another's path is dangerous.
Yeah, this is a very, very deep verse. It has a very profound meaning. Probably we'll get into some details of it in the next session. But as such, the brief understanding of this is, as long as we are in the three modes of material, situated in the three modes of material nature, one should not give up one's prescribed duty and artificially imitate others' prescribed duty. Like Arjuna here is a warrior. So Krishna is telling you should fight because you're a Kshatriya. But a person who has transcended all the three modes, for example, Vishwamitra Muni, he was a Kshatriya, but because of his long-standing tapasya, he became a Rishi, Brahmarshi. Yeah, there's a long story, very, very interesting story that is given in Ramayana, the whole journey of Vishwamitra Muni. From King Vishwamitra to Brahmarshi Vishwamitra, the whole journey, oh my God, I'll tell you, it's so mind-boggling. You will not read anything like this in any histories. It's very, very interesting. Okay, so this is one example where Kshatriya acted in the capacity of a Brahmana. And also there is another example of Parshuramji, who was a Brahmana actually, who was the son of Jamadagni, Brahmana by birth, but because of circumstances and to uphold dharmic principles, he has taken up the Kshatriya Dharma. So because these are perfected souls who are beyond the three modes, they can act in any capacity, irrespective of the Varna, as per what suits the situation. But for the common people like us who are in the three modes, we should act according to our the modes we are situated in, that is as per our psychophysical nature. Okay, so that is all for today. So next week we will discuss about the enemy of the soul, the last section of the third chapter. So today we have discussed about being an example, that is how one who has achieved the perfection still continues to be an example in performing one's prescribed duties. And Krishna gave the example of Janaka Maharaj, and he told how he himself continues to perform his prescribed duties, because by not performing so, the common men will follow such an example and are ultimately doomed. So that's how Krishna continues the theme of setting the right example by one's performing prescribed duties. And he also told about how whatever great men set as an example, the common people follow. Okay, fine. So thank you all very much. And also Krishna has explained about the attitude in which one has to perform. Nirashi nirmamo bhutva yuddhasva vigitajaga. By giving up Litaji, one has to fight. And Krishna said about how one should not artificially imitate others' position, and one should situate oneself in one's position and act according to one's psychophysical nature. That's how Krishna concluded. Okay, fine. So it went a little long today. Next week it's 36 to 45, just 10 verses. We will finish early. Any questions? Yes. Okay, so I just wanted to announce that every day at 5:30 a.m. we have a morning program from 5:30 to 6:40, to 7. But you all can join at 6:30, where we all come together and we just chant. Let's say you can chant with 2 rounds from 6:30 to 6:45. You can join the session. If anybody is interested, I will post it in the group. We have been doing this for the last 1 year. So we have a lot of students joining in from different colleges, and our Sindhuja, Srinija, Kavya, Shravya, all of them, we're all doing it for the last 1 year. It's been very nice because it's very nice early in the morning when you fine tune your consciousness to the divine holy name of the Lord. So feel free to join the morning program at 6:30 a.m. I will send the link in the group. Okay, thank you all very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Any questions, you can post it.